Okay.
There's the case studies, the standards. This is the syllabus here.
Say that again.
This is the case study, the standards, and then the syllabus is right here.
Okay. Now when I'm finished, I touch what?
Oh, whenever you're done with everything, you just hit up here.
This little circle?
Yeah, and then it'll come down to a smudge. And then all you do is you exit out, and when it exits, it will give you a save option.
It'll save it to here.
Yes.
All right, got it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start because we have a basketball game tonight.
Yes.
We can cover what we need to cover in a relatively short period of time. I want to remind everybody that the annotated bibliography is due on the 4th, and be prepared to present the results of the annotated bibliography, either here in person or online. And expect Gabriella log in and she just called.
Will you have to go through the 20 or just like some?
To give an overview.
Okay.
An overview of, your topic, what methods of research you use to conduct it, what did you find consistencies in the literature, did you find differences, and what appears to be most logical and most reasonable, and bingo. Okay, I don't know how many y'all have to book it. We're covering chapters 7 through 12 today. I'm going to go pretty fast. Basically, everybody likes to look at why we do what we do. And what helps explain why we do what we do is our mission statement of the institution, our professional vision or philosophy about how to go about our work, and then the expectations of students and the environment. And so there has to be a way to commonly communicate what you're doing, because those can come from three very distinct positions or expectations that have to merge into what we call a higher education experience. So what is theory? Theory is a way that we explain phenomena, expectations. We develop hypotheticals based on results, information. Like, for instance, there's an expectation that if teachers teach, students are going to learn. And there's an expectation that if students are going to learn, that by the time they finish the program, whether it's K through 12 or university, then they're going to be able to apply that knowledge in their profession. And so how do you go about doing it? It's like doctors can treat a fever if they know it's based on an infection and they try antibiotics, but we're treating the mind, the soul, and the body. And so it's a little different mechanism. Theory is an explanation of an observable, oftentimes social phenomena. It helps us form our conceptual frameworks, what we do on page 139. There are several reasons why we use theory, because basically you have to be able to justify what it is you're doing, because no one cares what my opinion is or your opinion is. What does the history of the profession recommend? What are the expectations, outcomes? What are the guidelines? What are the mores? What are the ethics that create the expectation that we're going to do something with students? If we're going to be providing student personnel programs and services on a campus, there's an explanation that it's going to have a benefit. The first benefit is it going to increase retention and graduation? The second benefit is it going to foster development of the individual students or groups of students as a whole? And then third, is it going to help develop and make the institution successful? And so on page 139, they list what theories help us to do. I should have moved this over, but that's okay. Theories are generally organized in seven major categories: psychosocial, cognitive, moral, ethical, faith, spiritual, college impact, student success, and emergent theoretical practice. Take some time to read between pages 140 and 146 on the book. Regardless of what model they take the position from, they all come back to the same thing. What are we doing that's making a difference in students' lives? In student affairs, we have what's called teachable moments. Whether it's an individual or group, there's an expectation that we're supposed to help shape the community, environmental press, environmental expectations that support the overall mission of the institution. Chicken's got some discussion on the bottom of page 141. We have 7 vectors that basically say and explain the growth of a human being. For instance, like you have a child, a brand new born child is totally dependent for its physical well-being, its psychological well-being, what it's going to learn from the adults that it interacts with. And then they get to be 2 or 3 years old and they start to communicate back. And they don't always communicate back in a way that's going to demonstrate a support for our basic values and beliefs. And so then you have shaping that goes on. And kids generally stay pretty close to home. And what they think and what they understand is based on what the adults have tried to teach them or have taught them by de facto being in that interaction with them. Then as they get to be about 7 or 8 years old, they start getting on their bikes and they go out in the neighborhoods. And you start to hear people say, you start to hear kids say, well, that's not what so-and-so's mom or dad says or does. You probably have said that at some time yourself. Because their world of knowledge and their expectation of what to do or not do in a situation is going to be challenged because they're going to see other people doing something very similar but in a different way. And then there's an expectation that you're supposed to learn to start to take care of yourself. That comes from the time of whether you have bathroom training, to kids start to dress themselves, and then when they get to be teenagers, they're expected to be able to take information and make logical, consequential decisions about what to do. And then we send them off to college, and they are suddenly from under the community's shaping, they're from under the parents' shaping, the church shaping, whatever has shaped them into young adults, and they now possess all this information. And there's an expectation that when they go away to college, they're supposed to grow up. They're supposed to mature. They're supposed to figure out what they want to do in life. And then they get the preparation, whether it's cognitive, social, or psychomotor, and they go about living their life. They develop relationships. They may or may not establish a family, but they pursue a career because it's what they think they want to do, and they think they're prepared to do it, so they want to go out and show and have experience that demonstrates that they are successful people. And then as they get older, they go back into the old role of being parents, not the old role, a new role of being parents if they have children, or if they don't have children, they still are supposed to evolve from being a front line or entry level position. You're supposed to mature in your professional development and performance to where you show that you can make higher order decisions. And then as they get into the twilight of their life, they start to think about things differently. They start to prepare for the future with or without them. And so Chicken says those are all vectors in the way people develop, regardless of what culture you go to in the world. There's an expectation in some form or another that those vectors are going to be pretty close to the same in shape, but they help shape this. And then there's a little note about Piaget makes a comment. They make a comment from Piaget from 1952. Mental capacities act as a filter through which individuals make meaning of experience and encounters. What that means is we understand things differently as people because our engagements and encounters up to this point in our life have all been different. but yet we're experiencing the same information. All 5 of you are hearing the point I'm trying to make, and hopefully you're making some understanding of it as it relates to what you think you know, or what you've been taught to expect, or how to think, or what to think about a situation. But it's sort of like you can have 5 people watch an automobile wreck, and you put them in a different room, and they're going to all have a different explanation of what happened. And you can look and see and hear and the same points being made, but very distinct in different ways based on our backgrounds. We all learn to do things differently. Some of us may be more influenced by what we see, what we feel, what we think, what we hear, what we do. All of us learn differently. Some of us have to read something to learn it. Others have to experience it. Others have to practice it. And so Piaget and Chicken and all those people make points about that college is a very personal experience for the individual student. But when we plan programs and services, we plan for the university. And so is there a match? Is there a goodness of fit to what the university offers to its individual students through the delivery of a consistent program or service? And why is that important? That's important because there's an expectation from society and from government and from students themselves that the collegiate experience is supposed to have an impact. That's the Nichols experience. That's the MSU experience. That's the Oklahoma State experience. That's what makes you University of Texas Longhorn. You've all experienced something common. When you go out and you meet a fellow Nichols student, even if you haven't met them before, you have a bond, you have a connection because you feel a closeness or alliance with because they've experienced something similar to what you experienced. So it must be like me a little bit. It helps break the ice because there's a complementness, because you've come and experienced the Nichols environment, you know people treat people with decency and respect for the most part. And so that's an experience of being a Nichols student, being a Nichols graduate. And so then we take theory and we turn it into practice. And that's one of the big challenges today. What to do? Because we're trying to personalize the student experience for each student, but in a way that we can deliver it from an efficiency perspective. We don't have and will never have enough funds to provide each student their own personal 24/7 student development officer. But nor does each student need a 24/7 student development officer. Some people may need to meet with an advisor once a week. Some can get by with once a semester, just because they're at different developmental stages, or they have fit into the community and feel a sense of belonging. Some students feel very comfortable once they feel welcome in the community to ask questions, whereas they may be very quiet until they do feel that connection. And so there's a different social interaction. And so how do we take and develop programs and services that are needed? And what they point out is that they refer to them as co-curricular challenges around page 160. What are we doing? Because to increase graduation rate, that's the big push. Everything that we do at the university, remember the university is supposed to prepare graduates to go out and make a difference in their communities and in their professional lives, one person at a time. Well, that's a very personalized charge. So to do that, we have to be able to demonstrate that you've learned the knowledge that you need to learn, but that you can also apply it, and that you can also communicate, not just verbally and written-wise, but computer-wise, and that you're going to make ethical decisions that serve the individual, the college, the community. And so that just doesn't happen by chance. And so we're dealing a lot with hypotheticals and theories and concepts and vision statements, but how do we turn it into something that's measurable? Because that's the big challenge that Student Affairs has. How can we prove we actually make a difference? And somebody will say, well, that's really easy. Just ask the students. Or do we have to have a pre-test, post-test comparison to show, because that was the trend about 25 years ago. Let's measure the student's social intelligence and their knowledge of their basic career and understanding, and then let's measure it at the end, and then we can prove that, hey, we did have an impact. Well, measuring knowledge or skills is a little easier than measuring someone's ability to apply the skills and knowledge to address a situation or an event or an environment or workplace issue, and then to prove that you actually had something to do with it. Because there are some students that come to school, and that's all faculty and staff have to do is provide the basic information and get out the way. Because that student's is the type of learner that learns well on their own. There are others that have to interact with people and have discussions. And so, how do we actually prove that we're doing what we're saying we're going to do? And if we're going to work in student affairs, that's going to be a challenge your entire career. They have a comment on page 167. And it's by Fleming and Witt. One of the greatest weaknesses in student affairs organization has been the inability to demonstrate how their efforts influence student learning. Also, although research on college impact provides ample implications, there are such influences. Too many student affairs professionals take the time to examine how, whether their programs and practices contribute to student outcomes. The entire national movement is to tell me student outcome. You're gonna provide graduates that you say are gonna be good teachers. Well, tell me what your graduates are supposed to be able to do. Can they plan? Can they work as a team? Can they present verbally and visually information? And so every every program, if you go look on the websites of Nichols, they're supposed to have expected student outcomes. And some of those outcomes for teacher education would be like, be able to pass the national certification exams, because if you don't pass that, you don't get your license. Well, at student affairs at secondary, post-secondary levels, how do you measure what they're supposed to do? Well, it comes down to, like for instance, we're going to have student government. Well, what do the students who participate in the formal student government process gain from that participation? And so, well, we can verify that each one that comes through the program can take a concept, analyze it, and make a proposal on what needs to happen to cause improvement. That's how the SJ senators come up with topics, and then they come up with motions or bills to pass in the student senate, or they get a student-wide petition, or there's a grievance, or there's a town hall meeting. And so that's how they're able to demonstrate that they have the ability to do an organization such as SGA. Like in the residence halls. Some of the things that people are supposed to get out of working on the residence hall staff are they learn to work with people from a variety of social, economic status and ethnic backgrounds. They should be able to demonstrate the ability to organize an activity that's educational, recreational, social in nature. They should, at some point, be able to demonstrate the ability to manage conflict. Because if you work on residence hall staff long enough, you're going to have a conflict situation to manage. They should demonstrate the ability that they know how to listen and analyze, and they have a decision-making framework. And that's on around page 20 something in the other book, but it's covered in this book. How do you go about, as student affairs professionals, making decisions? Because you just can't shoot from the hip. There may be a situation too where you have to shoot from the hip because you don't have time to go through a formal strategic plan. But Are you consistent? Can people count on you to make a reasonable decision that they know is not influenced by outside influences, but influenced by the facts and the situation and the people and the needs involved? So, two questions you're going to always be asked if you work in student affairs in higher education. Why are you doing what you do? How can you prove you're doing it? How can you prove you're doing it? And if you use some of these assessment or planning activities, such as the decision-making framework concept, or you use the organization of assessment model that they have in CAS standards, and there's a whole big section in chapter 8 and 9. It's actually in chapter, it's in chapter 9. It's around pages, where they move from graduation rate models, because I skipped the whole point that I needed to make the point. There are different levels of measuring outcomes. Each degree program at Nichols is going to have measurable outcomes. And we're going to be able to prove through some sort of evaluation or feedback from the superintendents that our graduates had successful ratings as teacher performance. And the same thing can be said about accountants, petroleum tech people. Did they go out and perform on the job where they had to demonstrate knowledge and concepts and ability and skills? You know, nurses the same way. And so there's the assessment at the institutional student development level. There's program and department assessment. There's dean, and there's the university as a unit itself, as a big unit. How does the state determine it's going to send money to Nichols to provide a service if there's not some measurable expectation in place of what's going to be the outcome of that investment? So you're going to hear it often. And then they get into the models and methods, but basically it all comes down to how do we define student success, how do we measure and determine that what we're doing helps to make a difference from a theoretical perspective, from a practical implication, from a student development perspective. On page 195 through 197, they have listed their professional associations that all have theoretical and visionary statements and developmental position papers. If you're going to be in the field of helping students learn, either academically, socially, personal and professional skill development wise, you need to make yourself familiar with those associations, because you never will have enough time to do everything yourself and to think about information and models and assessment. You can reinvent the wheel, or you can take the professional work that recognized professionals have done. The CAS standards. Well, no, I don't have. Yeah, I have one. This is a listing of all the different functional areas that CAS standards have been developed for. And you can pretty much, see, it's every functional area of service you can almost think of within a university. From tutoring to master's level educational programs. One of the things I'm going to do is a CAS study on what they recommend is student affairs in that higher education professional programs, all the way down to veteran services. And then they have functional areas. And see how they have general standards, student learning and developmental outcomes, ethical principles, CS turn program review. The program review is taking the theoretical information that involves assessment and putting it into an active plan, a regular ongoing plan. Because the review process basically allows you to study your current situation or status in comparison to professional standards or expectations nationally, and then provides you a guide for developing how you're going to improve your outcomes in your program. And so it's never a closed loop. Most institutions you see have standards review every 5 years for their programs or services. I've seen some institutions do it as often as 3 years. But the key is you just don't do it and set it aside. You update the results of that review. I have a hard copy here to share with you, but you can go online. And this is a review, a self-assessment guide. And you can see they take the 14 different service areas that they address, ranging from mission, to program, to leadership, to human resources, to ethics, to legal responsibilities, to diversity, to equity and access, to assessment and evaluation. In every national accreditation team has recognized the CS standards as one way to go. I'm looking for the pages on page 228 of the book. There's a listing of the regional accreditation organizations. Depending on the state that you're going to work in, they're going to be in a different regional accreditation association. Why is that important? For universities to receive any Title IV monies, whether it's for students to get financial aid, Pell Grants, student loans, work study, for the university to be able to get research grants from the federal government, you have to be an accredited agency and meet the accreditation standards of that regional accrediting body. The body is made up of representatives from all the colleges and universities in the service area. And so it's the professionals who work in the same field as you who are not there to tell you what to do, but to make sure that whatever you say you're about and are supposed to be accomplishing, that you have an effective planned program that's designed to help you achieve your program outcomes and expectations, and that you have an assessment and evaluation in place for making sure that you're making continuous improvement in the development of programs and services for the purpose of enhancing student outcomes. It all comes back to enhancing student outcomes. And that's on an individual level, on a group level, and on a program level. I'm trying not to say anything you can get to say. Chapters 7, 8, 9 tend to be the meat of it, and then chapter 11 when we talk about the CS standards and regional accreditations and associations. Let me think of the way to say this. Universities are in transition across the country. I haven't found one institution out there, not that they're not there, I just haven't found one, that hasn't changed some way significantly in the last 20 years. It can be in terms of, well, we've changed admission standards. Like at Nichols in 2005, we became a selective admission institution. We stopped admitting students who have to take remedial courses. In some cases, there were co-curricular, co-requisites, the courses that were offered at the same time as the remedial course. But basically, we went from having a freshman class of 1,500 a semester to around 1150. there was an expectation you had to have a 20 on your ACT and take the core curriculum. Schools like, and then the schools like LSU and Louisiana Tech and UL Lafayette were supposed to require a 23 or a 25 ACT and a higher GPA to get admitted, but they didn't play by the rules because at the same time the admission standards were going into effect, budget cuts were happening and state support for institutions relied more on tuition than they did state funding, and it's still that way today. And so we're in a time when there's transitions. In addition to selective admissions, there's been this whole national trend to, because of the cost of going to school, financial issues are paramount for many, many students. We have many students who are leaving with college degrees with $20,000, $30,000 of debt that will take them 10 to 15 years to pay off. And what impact does that have? People with debt are less likely to get married, are less likely to have children, are less likely to buy a home, are less likely to buy a new car, are less likely to take vacations, are less likely to have medical care because they're paying a note. And so it delays a lot of the reasons why you came to college. They have access to goods and services that make your life better become more difficult to get because you have this tremendous debt that you're paying. And so every college is having to look at what's the actual cost and return on investment. That's the terminology we need. What's the return on investment? What does it cost for a student to get a degree? It used to be if you had a college degree, you made between $2 and $3 million more over your lifetime of work than the people who didn't have a college degree. And then if you had a master's, it was higher. If you had a doctorate, it was higher. Because the expectation is you're going to be in higher paying jobs. And then there's other challenges like students used to go regionally to the nearest school, or at least to a school in state. People shop around now because they don't even have to leave the comfort of their bedroom. I can go to Idaho State tomorrow. And so online programs and delivery of services. The Phoenixes, the four private institutions have driven a lot of change in the way that they do business as compared to the traditional in-seat classrooms. And so faculty have had to struggle, including me, to try to figure out what can we do that allows you to complete the degree program without having to be in seat. Like some of you could have attended by Skyping or Zooming in, or you could wait for me to send you the link and watch a lecture at your convenience. But there's a lot of programs that don't provide those lectures. They just provide information to read, but sometimes a basic discussion. They expect you to do some delivery or demonstration of learning, but not every bit of information can be understood because it's read in the way manner you want it understood. And so those are things that are shaping. And then in states like Louisiana, there's the concept of, well, what about workforce development? That's something that's national. So universities are having to respond to students who are going to have big debt. So there's big expectation from their parents and from the students that that degree is going to make a big difference. There's the challenge of budget cuts from government for state-supported institutions. There's the challenges for online programs and different program delivery models. And all of this is happening while we're supposed to provide a personalized experience. I haven't met a college yet, and I've been on like 9 different accreditation teams. I went to a school, I can't tell you where it is, but it's a specialized school in acupuncture. Their program delivery was very different than a Nichols or a Southeastern. I've been to schools where they only had 2 years of college at the school, the junior and senior year. So everybody came from their freshman and sophomore year. So their student activities were quite different. They focused more on clubs and fraternities and sororities. Because people, hey Gab. Gabby was stuck in traffic. You there?
Hi.
Okay. Glad you could join us. And I'll send you the link for what you missed tomorrow. You can look at it when you can.
So
What?
I think you're so funny.
My grandkids think I'm crazy. And so it comes down to this whole thing of how can we prove what we're doing is making a difference in the lives of students. And if we can't prove it, administrations are going to get rid of the programs and services. There's an expectation that if you're offering online classes, that the same level of advising, academic support, counseling, even health services, tutoring, is all going to be offered to the online students in some form or another because you've identified that as an essential service at the institution by having it. So how are you proving that your online students are getting the Nichols experience? The Nichols experience. Because remember, most students go to college, select a college that they feel like best fits them. In some cases, best fits what they can afford. If they go to that institution and they find a different environment and they experience something different than what they expected, wanted, or need to be successful, they're going to leave. It's not the consumer dedication. People don't look at graduating from Nichols or LSU or Harvard or any other school as being different. I just want a degree that's going to help me get what I want as quickly as I can in the manner that's going to be cheapest. And oh, by the way, I want to be as prepared to be able to compete with people from around the world, just not in the United States. And that's some of the challenges that colleges are having. So they're having to redefine not just the academic programs, but the student affairs programs and services. How much academic advising do you have if you operate from a cohort perspective? Do you know what a cohort perspective is? That's a group of people that are going to experience the same thing at the same time. So we let a freshman class in, we're going to tell all the freshmen, your first semester, you're going to all take 15 hours. And you're going to take English 101, Math 101, History 101, Speech 101, Biology 101. And you're going to progress through as a group, taking the same number of hours each semester as everybody else, because the model of efficiency is we don't have to have a 20-to-1 ratio to teach history or biology. Because how much laboratory experience do people get online for a history degree or a biology degree? So the faculty are already saying that maybe they're not really needed, but they enhance. And not only that, it allows you to look at the classes that you're going to offer, require, that truly make your educational experience unique. One of the things schools like to use as a recruitment thing is we have a small faculty to teacher ratio. And faculty are always available, and you can talk to them, you can talk to them. Go sit in one of those classrooms at LSU where they have 900 people in a Math 101, or Math whatever, freshman or whatever they call it, freshman or math class. That's basically saying that the learner in the classroom is ready to learn, and it's just a matter of them gaining specific information from the instructor and then taking it and running with it.
There's so many people like coming out of the high school level that are past that though, like dual credit and stuff like that you can take.
Yes.
So like if you put all the students in one thing, you actually there's some people you're holding back.
Yes, there's a lot of freshmen that are coming in as juniors.
Right.
Yep.
And so they missed that crazy, silly, wild freshman year experience because they go right into the
I
junior
was a
senior.
sophomore.
What's that?
I was a sophomore.
You were a sophomore.
I didn't have any classes with my friends, which I wanted, but also don't want to be I don't want to be put back when I could finish college early.
And so is the focus on getting them the academic preparation that they need or the skill set preparation, or is it on shaping the whole student? because you have all these programs and services for freshmen and sophomore, but here you're telling me they're not really needed because
I feel like if you want to personalize the student's development, you should let them do their own course path. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to personalize to the kids that come in as juniors. But if you are like, y'all are all the same, that's not personalizing the experience like we talked about in practice.
there are some people that believe very strongly and have always thought it, is that there shouldn't be degrees. The universities are offering one bachelor's degree. And if you want to pick up teaching certification along the way, or if you really want to be an accountant, you take extra courses to get you ready to sit for the accounting test or the national teacher exam or the nursing. Because what we find out is that most people are working in a field different than their undergraduate major. Unless it requires a licensure like an accountant or a CPA or an engineer. I can't go be an engineer because I don't have an engineering background. I can't even sit for an engineering test. But most other people are working in a field different than their degree was in. And most people have left their dream job after 2 years or less. About 40 to 50% of new teachers quit in the first 3 years. Every once in a while we have a nursing graduate
It's a lot of work.
that quits because they can't stand the sight of blood and guts. Because those dummies didn't have that all over them. And so there are some people that would argue, do we need all this specialization going on, or do we just need to teach people to read, to write, different methods of thinking, planning, developing a theory, demonstrating a conceptual framework for making decisions that are going to run their life by? Can they plan and achieve a plan?
I think undergrad should be like graduate school. I feel like I've learned more about what I would do for my future now. Like, at some point in my undergrad, I want to feel like I'm about to take this and go. And I don't feel like I got to that point where I was like, I'm sure that I can go into a radio or TV station and be the best news reporter.
And see, some people would say, had you come to Nichols, you'd have got that experience. Because that Texas school was a little big.
It was huge.
And so there's going to be a certain number of students that are going to take advantage of programs and services, and there'll be certain that aren't. But how do we match up with it? And so that's and some of the things that you're experiencing in your master's program is because by the time we get to the master's program, we're not supposed to tell you what to think. We're supposed to provide you different methods of thinking about things, and maybe some additional knowledge or enriched knowledge at a higher order level. But basically, by the time you walk out of here, you're supposed to be ready to be a professional, higher education staff person. And so that allows you to run like a bumper car. On the way this way? No, I don't like that anymore. I'm going to go this way. But when you're in a degree program in nursing or teaching, you can't go out and take French 3 and 4 and substitute it for that calculus class. And so you get to choose a master's experience that more fits your interests. You've narrowed down kind of what you want to do. Whereas in those formative developmental years, that's not always the case. Often the people change their major, Daniel.
Quite often. I'd say at least average for me, I think it'd be about 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times.
Yeah, that's
Especially first generation
especially
kids.
before they find exactly what they want. It's usually about 2 or 3 times to change their major.
It used to be trades ran in families. Teachers who were people were teachers,
My parents
had
told me
parents
not
as
to go
teachers.
into education.
What's that?
My parents told me not to go into education. And
So
both
they
of them
were
are.
educators.
Yeah, my dad is 28 years principal at my high school, and my mom was 20 years as a teacher. And both of them were like, don't do this. And somehow I ended up in it. But this wasn't the plan. This is just
I
the
jokingly
best
tell
program.
people we are all because of or despite of our parents. Just like I would never smoke, but my dad did and he fought for me. So I hated cigarettes since I was a kid.
It was simpler. back then. That's how my parents grew up. It was like, well, their mom told her to be a teacher, so she decided to be a teacher.
Well, the same thing that's happened in higher education with the pressure from the outside for performance, for doing more with less, the social issues that come to schools. I guarantee you, the teachers didn't have to put up with, or they didn't put up with the things when I was in school as compared to when y'all were in school. I remember one day I got in trouble, so the music teacher beat me on the hands with a little, whatever you call it, little thing they direct with, baton or whatever. So my mom goes, okay, I'm gonna take care of this. She gets dressed in her Sunday best, brings me to school the next morning, wants to meet with the teacher, and the person goes, if you have to beat my son, please don't get his hands, he's gonna have to work for you. Whereas nowadays, if a teacher did that, I'm suing you. I already called Morris Board. Yeah, you already got the suit filed. You gonna stay my kid. You embarrass my kid in front of the class.
My mom was my pre-K teacher, and she hit us with a meter stick. Like we'd sit at a little round table, and I remember her like popping hands with a meter stick, and definitely can't do that now. It hits hard.
The meanest people on the face of earth were the Irish nuns that came to the United States in the 1960s, because there used to be a philosophical understanding in religion in the church that you were born a sin, and so literally they figured they had to beat the hell out of you to get you to live a good life. This lady would lock kids in the clothes closet for 3 or 4 hours, stand, make you kneel and rice in the corner. She was mean. But we survived.
Look at you now.
Look at me now. I'm funny. I joke funny. I used to tell the teachers' names that I had in school. For one time, I was describing what a teacher did. It was a retired Irish nun, and she, for some reason, she thought boys were like the heathens of the world, and girls were going to save the world. She'd make the little girls kneel on the floor, if their skirts didn't hit the floor, they had to stay out in the hall because they were indecent. And so I'm describing her, and this is like 1995, and I had her in 1968. And the lady goes, is that Miss Carey you talking about? I go, yeah, how did you know that? She's still teaching. She's 90 years old, still teaching. Still years over. But you know what? You learn how to follow the rules in her class, if you learn anything. So we have a change in student population. We have a change in their abilities, college readiness, in a lot of cases, attainment before they start your college. We have a change in the fact that 35 years ago, students could work their way through college. That's not possible anymore. You cannot make money making the minimum wage and pay enough to go to school. And then the expectations of colleges have changed. If enough college graduates don't have jobs, then a college is going to have fewer students down the road because the word will get out. The accrediting associations will handle you. That's what they call retention graduation rates. But you have to be careful when you look at retention graduation rates, because I can take any group of characteristics you have. Like, if you tell me you're 20 ACT from an upper lower income background, and your grade point average in high school was above 2.5, I can look in your face and say, if you come to Nichols or a state school in Louisiana, you have about a 22% likelihood of finishing the degree program, because the data will show that over time. And so when schools brag about their graduation rates or their retention rates, what happens is, if the average ACT to get in Harvard is a 30, they better have a better graduation rate than the average ACT of being 22 or 23 at Nichols is, because they're dealing with higher ready qualified students. That doesn't mean that the Harvard graduate will perform any better in their profession. Just like at LSU, that's a research one institution. You're supposed to have a 25 ACT or higher and 3.0 to get in. The average ACT for the freshman class is probably about a 24. They better retain students their freshman sophomore year. Because remember, your freshman sophomore year was basic classes anyway. And so when you compare graduation and retention rates in the colleges and universities, there should be a difference in expectation. But the average parent in the community and the average politician and news reporter is not going to understand that. Just like I went to college with a kid that in 2.5 years came in with 59 hours of advanced placement credit. Advanced placement credit. They didn't have to do anything. He graduated with a 4.0 with 2 degrees, one in chemistry and one in nuclear physics. The students didn't understand that. That's all we had to do was to provide him the highest level of information and personal experience as possible and get out of the way. When you're dealing with students that have a higher skill level to start with, and you're going to measure based on the level of skill to award degrees, you better have a better graduation rate at Tulane. If Tulane didn't have a graduation rate higher than Nichols, the parents who pay the 50-something thousand a year to go to Tulane would be throwing a fit. But do our graduates compete with the Tulane graduates? Our pre-med graduates get in medical school just as at the same rates. Our nurses pass the trade in the nursing exams 100%. Can't get any higher than that. Our nurses walk out with the same RN that they do at Tulane, LSU, medical school. Our teachers have to pass the same national teacher exam to get a license in Louisiana. So there are some concepts that say you have selective admission and then you have selective graduation. If you have open admission, there's an expectation that a lower percentage of students are going to finish because you have students coming with a 10 or 12 ACT as well as a 30. Whereas if you have selective admissions, you're not letting in 10 to 20 to 19 in to start with. Now, can those students who start remedial, they generally graduate down to about a 12 on the ACT. If somebody has less than a 12, it'll really bad luck because if you just bubble in anything, you'll get 25% right. Statistically, anyway. But generally, if you have less than a 12 ACT, my doctoral study found that your chances of graduating were pretty slim. And as your ACT and your high school grades got better, the likelihood of you graduating did better. But now we're also looking at, we're assessing things from a value-added performance. Let's suppose the 4 of us are Math 101 instructors. And remember, to get in our Math 101 class, they have to have what, 19 or 20 ACT to get Math 101? So all students all have to meet the same requirements. 82% of her students pass with a C or better. 78% of his. 64% of hers. 12% of mine did. Do we have enough information to make a call yet? And that's for the last 6 years that's been the average. So some enrollment management people would say, well, let's look at what's the percentage of the graduates that do better in the next math course. Because if you finish 101, you're supposed to be ready to pass 102. And then we find out the passing rate in 102 is about the same. So at the very least, Professor D should get with Professor A, B, and C and figure out what are they doing to help more students demonstrate that they've learned what they need to learn in Math 101.
And it might be something as slight as an accent. Or you talk really fast.
Could be.
A lot of students trip out about that kind of stuff. Well, I really can't. It's too fast. I can't.
But at the very least, that college is going to have pressure either from an accrediting agency now because they look at graduates, because they're telling schools, look, you're taking these people's money because you already decided that they have the skills necessary to pass your degree program. So why is only 12% passing this math? Are you paying people a whole class or to teach? Are you paying people to whole class or to teach? Are you measuring success based on how many people show up for class or how many people learn the expected learning outcomes? Like for that math class, for people to pass the class, they should have to demonstrate certain skills. So the expected student outcome is going to be they'll be able to apply basic algebra to solve whatever the word's going to be. It is your test in your evaluation process. It could be just her test, or my test, or ridiculous. We had a situation in history one time where the same thing had basically happened. And what we found out is that Teach and D, who had the lower passing rate, was getting all essay tests. Teachers A, B, and C were given Scantron tests. 90% of the students would rather a Scantron test than an essay test, especially because she took off for grammatical errors, misspellings, information that had nothing to do with history. And so who's right? Because her argument was they should be able to read and write by the time they get to my 200 level history course. And do you want to produce graduates out there that can't answer in a single page letter the response to a problem? So she had a point. Just like when I first started this program in 1998, I had a student tell me because they had a paper to do. And she graduated in sociology from Nicholas, and she says, Dr. Dowell, I never had a research paper to do. When I tell that to the academic vice president, she threw a fit. How can a student who's graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree not have had the experience of having to demonstrate the skills that are necessary to write a coherent, logical research paper at some point, somewhere along the line? And so the point I'm trying to make is we can jump at statistics as they are released, but they never really tell the whole story. They never really tell the whole story. Suppose all four of these classes had people that had the same ACTs and GPAs to get in the classes, but my class was filled with 30 veterans who just came back from Iraq. I have different family issues being a non-traditional student, where they usually do better anyway. And you're also paying. And so there's a lot of variables when it comes to assessment. And so a lot of people like to take the easy way out. And so if you're going to be assessing, you should be making sure that the information you're collecting and assessing your program of service provides you the information you need to make the call that we are on the right track or we are on the wrong track. And we need to improve this for the purpose of improving student learning outcomes. If it's too hot in the room for me, but it's great temperature for y'all and y'all learn better being 65 degrees, then it needs to be 65 degrees because I'm paid to be here. You're paying to be here. So assessment is going to address a lot of variables and a lot of information. I didn't have the time to pass around sales standards. Let's take a 5-minute break and we're going to come back and review one or two of these case studies. Because I want you, when you're ready to do your case studies, which I think is the 18th, when you do your case study presentation. Right. Now you can all do a case study review, you can do an annotated bibliography report, you can do a state institution presentation. You need to look at the calendar of dates that we're going to need. And you can do them in person. You can do the electronic presentation if you wish. Most people prepare, in the past would prepare a brief outline for your major talking points and what you're trying to say. But you'll need to look at the dates because we only want to do about 4 or 5 per class meeting because I think there's 9 of y'all that have to do it, 8 or 9. And so if you're doing 3, that's 24. So we have 6 class meetings left. We need to be about 4. We can go 6 if we have to, but because again, remember, they're not half an hour presentation. The longest report should be your state institution report. The case study, you can just basically read the case study or give some background introduction to the case study explain how what decision-making framework you use to respond to it, and then that's it. Whereas your state entity report, you're gonna have to talk a little bit about the institution, the methodology that you went about using to collect the information, what you discovered, and what's the result. That's generally going to take a good 15 or 20 minutes for an institution report, whereas the other things are generally 5 minutes or less. The bibliography is generally a 5-minute presentation or less. The case studies are generally a 5-minute presentation or less. Okay. And the book reviews, they generally book really less than us, about 5 to 10 minutes at the most.
Yeah, less than 10.
If the student had a really interesting book, there were questions. And I do expect y'all to ask each other questions, especially if you want to make sure you're understanding the information correctly. And nobody should take it personal. If he has 5 questions and you have none, it may have to do with the content you're presenting is more difficult to conceptualize than maybe my report. So Gabby, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Are you still there? Maybe she's not there. She's there. Because she is. Oh, she's
I'm still here.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we're going to come back and do some case studies. So
Sound good.
So feel free to jump in if you have a comment.
Okay.
So for the annotated like we picked our topic, so we picked 20 sources.
20 sources. And it should be we prefer referee sources, meaning that it's not me writing a Wikipedia paper. Because anybody can post anything in Wikipedia, whatever it's pronounced. But it doesn't have to be truthful or correct. Whereas if it's coming from a professional association publication, or an institute, or a university, or some reputable source.
So like on the legal library.
Yeah, if you
That's
find,
what I've been using.
you can.
JSTOR.
What's that?
JSTOR.
I'm sorry.
JSTOR.
JSTOR.
Yeah, it's research.
So like I picked organization administration, student development program services. So basically the sources have to relate to something.
Should relate to that concept.
So like student affairs.
And you could narrow it down to student affairs or higher education management units.
The ones like I found like 4 sources, and we summarize it and we say how it relates back.
Because there are different conceptual models, and they're going to be different based on the size of the institution, the history of the institution, whether it's a state or a private institution. They're going to all be different.
So like it's just one paragraph.
Yeah, per resource, yeah.
Okay, because I have another teacher's making so like 2 paragraphs for like source.
I'm not somebody that counts words, I count substance.
I want to make sure, because I have like 4 done already, so I didn't want to do more.
And hopefully you pick
Yeah, 501. Yeah.
He's doing an annotated bibliography also.
Yeah, we just need 3 sources for our paper, but like
I just finished that.
Who's teaching that?
I have Dr.
Oh, Wayne.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think
He's a professor, yeah.
I just finished that.
His is a math background.
yeah, like
So if you want to impress him, do something math related.
He's got a find topic about school, like some controversial topic that you can do, that you can explain like multiple sides for it.
In that research class, basically what he's looking for is for, my guess, these professors are different, is they're looking for an organized method that you use to go about collecting your reputable information to justify how you structured your response. The outcome of the response is subjective. The structure of it and the format and how it's able to be understood is subjective.
so like I found an article that has to do with like intercollegiate athletics, so like that would work for student affairs too.
Many places, athletics are doing student affairs.
Yeah, like it was about like the different models. So it would work for that topic.
I'm trying to get it closely related to year mid-20 programs as possible. But like, you know, I'm trying to
Look at student support programs.
Yeah.
You use the thesaurus and find like words because everybody's going to call it differently.
Yes, I mean, like,
Yeah, like it's such a broad topic, organization, administration, and school design.
yeah, that's why I broke it down to like.
I just chose
business
student
or-
affairs.
To show you how to think out of the box, two of the most interesting presentations I've ever heard in my life were both math-based. But one was based on the mathematical basis of music. Because music is an application of mathematics. And not theory is the other one. There's actually forms you can come up with depending on the environment you're in. It calculates the pressure with restraint. And so you never think about something like that. Wow. So like, my wife looks at cooking as a chemical process. Because her background was in institution foods and her minor was in chemistry. And so, you know, when she has a recipe, she follows it exactly to the 10th of an ounce. Because if it says 180 degrees, it can't be 179. It better be 180 degrees.
That makes sense.
Because that's the temperature that's necessary for the chemical reaction to happen.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it's like a certain topic of the top or it can't just each source just somehow relate to.
As long as the resources are in the student services area, we don't have anything to worry about. I'm hoping that this work that you're doing, you're going to be able to use later.
That's why I wanted to find out.
Yeah,
what
like
I'm trying to do the foundation for the next step.
I use like our actual book, like one of the chapters as a source because it's like it was based on like organizational and administrative knowledge. Okay, like chapter 18.
But I'm trying to think of how. Okay, Gabby, you there? We're going to start back up.
I'm here. We're ready to go.
Do y'all have a case study in particular you want to start with? So we're not going to do three, we're going to do two. There's the power of the press.
Yeah, that one wasn't interesting.
That's how they're going to be coming
You can do the one.
in memorandum. What's that?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, let's start with the first one since it's here. If y'all don't have a copy, y'all can follow along. Oh,
This is interesting.
my hands are cold, so it doesn't. Gabby, tell me when you're ready to move to the next page. I'll pull it up. Unless you have a copy.
Yeah, in front of me. Yeah,
You have a copy in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Does anybody else need time to read it? Okay. In the book, I'm going to pass around. There's a foldout in the book. You have the book. Between pages 24 and 26 that proposes a type of decision making.
I bought the book for the use of the person break out that part. Can I take a picture of
We'll come see you.
it? Yeah.
That's the only reason I have it. It's just like, this is I'm renting it, so
Yeah.
I don't
I
want
got
to.
Pam's honest
Because
with
the
you.
other people,
But because you personally brought it, you can make a copy.
5 people have used it and they haven't ripped it out yet, so
Oh,
I don't want to be the first one to do it.
Well, you can make, because you paid to use it, you can make a copy.
Yeah.
The person use, but I can't make copies for all the help because then I'm infringing on somebody's copyright.
Hey, Dr. Dial,
Yes, ma'am.
is there a way we can find that online? Because I rented the book and that tear out is gone.
I'm not sure if you can find it online.
If I make copies of it.
Don't tell me what I don't need to hear.
Just
Um,
hand it to me after class.
Gabby, I can try to get you a copy tomorrow because what I'm gonna have to do is email you the document
All right, that works. Thank you.
because I have it on my email. Okay, but basically, this is one suggestion for a decision-making framework. the point that the authors of this book are trying to make is that you can't just wing everything. Because what's going to happen is if you're winging it, it's going to be subject to the instant pressure of the moment. It's going to be subject to your mental and sociological state at the moment. It's going to be affected by the excitement of the moment. And you can't have any of those determine how you're going to make a decision. One of the things that I'm proudest about that people used to tell me often when I worked in student affairs was that no matter what happened, I approach things in the same way. Because I took the drama out, I took the political pressure out, I took who it was out, because if there's one, you may not agree with what I decide sometimes or often, but one of the best things I've had students tell me in the past is, I disagree with your decision, but I respect the fact that you took the time to really look at it. Not every situation is going to give you that time to look at it. And so the more that you have a process in place that's got to be rooted in your personal philosophy about the profession. It's got to be rooted in ethical statements of the professional association. And they have a page and listing of all the professional associations. I think it's 200, 201, something like that. The professional associations have ethical statements of best practices. It's also going to be based in what's the institution's expectations. Like, for instance, at a small, I'm just going to pick, and it could be an historically African-American institution, historically black college in Mississippi may approach things differently than they do a community college in Idaho because they have different mission statements. There's a belief that some schools have that student development is a major responsibility to campus, and there are other places where it's not. Some places have a one strike and you're out rule because they determine that that's the way they want things to operate. And they usually stick with it till it affects somebody that they want to keep.
Preach.
What?
That was good.
And so your decision-making framework can't be mine. It's got to be yours. And you have to develop almost like a position of, if you haven't taken the law class, when you take the law class, it's going to sort of be like writing a case review. What's the issue? Who's it impacting? What's the sense of urgency? That's all in the preliminary introduction phase. And then once you collect all the background information that's available or that you have time to collect, the next response becomes, what are my options? I've always used, what's the law? What's NICO's policies? What's best professional practice? What coincides best with my responsibility and my job as an individual and being fair and consistent in how I approach it. But I practiced that so much it became an instinct. It's sort of like teaching a football player how to block. Once they practice it so much, when they call the play in the huddle, they don't have to say, oh, you're going to block this way because that person's trained how to block for a certain play in a certain way. And the same thing goes with anything. And so to me, it doesn't matter what fraternity or sorority or what athletic team or whether someone's a veteran or not. Those are all things you take into consideration when you're developing an action, your plan, and response. And then once you have the response, you have to have somewhere in your process where you go back and you go, well, what was available to me at the moment allowed me to identify these solutions. I implemented this, and it worked or it didn't work. Or if I had more time to go back and collect more information about the background of it, I might have made a different decision. Or the sense of urgency at the time doesn't give you a lot of urgency. Like one time we had a guy walk through a plate glass window, and the campus protocol was, whenever somebody's cut seriously and bleeding, call 911 and get an ambulance there. Well, if we'd have waited for an ambulance, he'd have bled to death. So I was housing director. I turned to the assistant housing director. I was dean, and it was the housing director. and I said, get one of these guys pickups, we'll bring him to the hospital, because the hospital's right there. But had we followed the procedure that was in place, you know, just like we didn't follow contamination protocol because the moment didn't make it available. And so the director and I made the decision, look at it and go, well, we don't have protection, don't have this, but and we were like, well, if we don't, then this person's gonna die, and I can't live with that worse than living with this. And so decisions have implications. Decisions have implications. It's sort of like somebody's hanging on the edge of a cliff. You could easily get pulled over if you reach your hand down and pull them up. Or do you let them go, or do you pull them up? Depends. What you do, what your values are, what you can and can't live with. Okay, has everybody had a chance to read the case? So what we go, who wants to try to offer a shot at it on what to do, or what would you do? Gabby, you want to tell us what you would do?
Are we still looking at conduct unbecoming?
Yes.
Okay. So, reviewing my notes.
You in Tennessee right now?
Yes, sir.
It's got to be cold up there.
It has been a mess. We have had flooding, snow. A lot of my schools are out for flooding again tomorrow. It's been a crazy week.
Well, we're just having Mardi Gras parades.
I know, I'm kind of missing that.
Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Okay, while you're waiting, I'm gonna throw some questions out.
Go ahead, because I don't have my notes for this, so.
I don't. Okay, then anybody can, your classmates, you can jump into this. I don't remember if the case indicated who reported it, or did they just find out that it happened? So is there a complainant? You know, did the roommate who get punched report it, or did somebody who knew the roommate report it? One of the things about the case they never do explain is whether the roommate that got punched was really upset about it. Is that a factor you consider? Or do you say, no, because people who room together have disputes. We hope they don't result in becoming a physical dispute. But is it one of those things where somebody got a little heated and somebody did what they thought was the right thing, but it was the wrong thing? So what's your response? You're the person that's in charge of that residence hall. Do you take action where action is needed or not needed? Or do you don't take action and you create an expectation that the next time there's two people fighting, or you let them go, you didn't do anything to him?
Well, obviously, you have to take action.
Okay, let's Damien, go ahead. Damien says we have to take action.
I think you have to take action because you have to. Well, you have to take action because you have to set the expectation that there is a zero tolerance for violence. You know, whether it's amongst roommates or strangers, period. Now the action, you know, the consequences was that question. Like, how do you implement consequences for the situation? Because reading their roommates, obviously, so they're known, they know each other, they're practically best friends. One of them just happened to be intoxicated, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, one of them was drunk. The other one is a veteran, and the one that was drunk was doing some inappropriate things. And the one who was a veteran, he was of sound mind, but he didn't like what his best friend was doing at that moment, so he felt that he was doing right by doing the wrong thing to combat the other friend for doing the wrong thing, right? So, as a resident hall coordinator, it's like, how do you address the situation? Because you do have to do something. You can't just let this be swept under the rug. Because then, like you said, everybody else is going well. You let them go by. Right? You let them go by, so you have to address it. Me, It talks about the veteran having PTSD. So the drunk, his friend being drunk and things like that maybe could have been a trigger. So you could have some type of awareness on what that looks like. You could talk about, alcoholism. Advising students bring awareness on why not to drink or intoxicated.
Or is that two problems? The fact that
It's a lot of problems in this one situation, right? It's a lot of problems in this one situation because then you have not only veteran, not only alcohol, but then you also have the comment was made harassing younger female residents. So this is a complex problem. There's not one solution to this.
It's typical.
Huh?
That's the problems are never one issue.
Yeah, it's not.
It
It's not.
starts
one
up from previous things. Everything starts up. Most of the time, if they started fighting, it's because last week or 2 weeks before that something popped off, and it builds up and it turns into something. And it seems like this was just the problem, but it's not.
And like that guy has PTSD, so you kind of have to like figure out what type of actions appropriate for him.
Exactly.
I know that with PTSD, some people don't really, they for a split second they lose control. Because I one time heard a story. There was a person who had PTSD, and he was driving in traffic, and the person behind him honked his horn, and he just lost it. Got out of his car and started yelling at the person. Whenever he came to, he was like, "What am I doing? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." So at some points it's just that they still feel like at certain points all of a sudden they're back in battle and they can't really control what they're doing.
Exactly.
I think it's worth the
But I thought the guy that got
conversation.
hit was the one cat call and he was drunk. He was the veteran, right?
The one
The one that
No, the veteran was the person who pushed him and possibly
Okay.
the friend was drunk. That was kind of
So the
The
Yeah.
veteran
So
was
the
trying
friend's
to
got
take care of
so the friend's got a problem that he's been drunk and he's been catcalling and creating a hostile environment for women.
and then the
The
veteran.
veteran has a problem because he hit the guy.
Yeah,
I think
stopped.
it's worth the conversation, and I think that if it gets to a point where you're talking to both of them about the situation, and it doesn't sound like it can be resolved, you put them in two different apartments. No one needs to be kicked out of school.
So
I don't
one,
think
so,
anyone
so one
needs to
issue that
be-
needs to be determined is are they still compatible as roommates?
They might not be. That's what I'm saying. Like, and this is like, especially if you guys they talk about it, and they're like, honestly, last week he did this too, and the week before that, honestly, you gotta part ways. Like, if y'all don't see eye to eye, and it's gotten to a point where it's gotten physical, you just put them in two different places. Especially someone who may have PTSD, maybe he does need to be by himself.
Even though like they're friends, maybe the guy PTSD may not need to be
We had
around.
They did
I also think that you probably need to, at some point in time during this intervention, need to have a referral for counseling services, especially
Right.
if one of the students has PTSD. There could be other underlying issues or something that the student is doing to kind of cover up these problems. So I think mental health counseling should come into the conversation at some point in time.
Yeah.
That's why it's worth the discussion, because then you can figure out what's really going on. Because the friend who was drunk might come in and say, honestly, he's been acting weird for weeks. Last week he did this or whatever. Like, there could be so many underlying things
so
that
you
can
need to
come
collect
out.
more information.
You need more information. Yes, it happened, and a lot of people are like, "Well, kick him out of school," but you gotta talk about everything. I think
I don't
everything's
think
worth the
this is. I
conversation.
don't think
Yeah.
this is expulsion.
No, you don't
I
No,
think the
behavior.
first action should be some type of counseling or
Yeah.
discussion
It should be. Yeah, it should definitely be counseling.
before you do anything else. To see
Or
where
James.
their
Let me ask this: what if the guy would have hit him with a weapon or something? Does that change the thing?
You still
Like
have
for
to
instance,
discuss
one
it.
time we had a young lady. They got met at a woman whacked in the head with an arm and couldn't understand why she couldn't stand anymore.
Now with a weapon, that creates a different situation.
Yeah, because using a weapon, it kind of seems like you were in a way preparing for it to happen.
Premeditated.
But
Again.
free
Because you had that
with
chance
a
of
weapon, there's
picking up
more of a
something
potential
instead
to
of
cause
just
more
swinging.
severe harm.
But that is a situation they're going to have to deal with in dealing with students and behavior. Was it planned out and executed, or was it a spontaneous act that doesn't represent typical behavior, or does it represent typical behavior?
And that's why you need to talk about it, because this could have been an ongoing thing. This might not have been the first fight. It's just the first fight the resident hall found out about.
First, I was like, what people are doing.
Right. This is just the first time it's been brought to the attention of people.
At the end of the day, sound like they just need to be separated.
Yeah. Just
If it's not the first incident,
And then if it ends up being a recurring thing, like this guy goes to another place, lives with someone new, and it happens again, that's when you do you're gonna have to be expelled, because now you're like a harm to us, like to
You're
the
a
environment
threat
of the
to-
school you're a
Okay,
threat.
let's
It
sort the two
happens
guys out.
habitually.
Habitually,
what do
yeah.
If
What
it's
do you-
habitual, then
What do you
something should
What do
be.
you do in reference to the young ladies if they come in and complain that they don't like being treated like a piece of meat and they need to be respected and not be harassed?
Maybe he needs to be put somewhere else. I still don't think he needs to be expelled from school, because a lot of guys say a lot of things all the time. Not
I agree. I
saying-
don't think he should be expelled for this first time.
down for the first
Right.
I think
offense.
if it's a recurring issue without the student seeking help or at least talking to somebody about it, then maybe look at some
And also,
more advanced disciplinary actions.
I think
If
it
it
also
happens
depends on
again
what the
and
girl
multiple
says.
times.
If the girl comes in and says they've been raped, that's completely different
Yeah.
from a cat call, or I don't know. It's just those are two different
Sure.
things.
Another story, not from like schools, but there was one. There was one time I heard a story about this one guy. He was harassing like. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna tell you. It was actually from a TV show, from an actual reality TV show, and one of the contestants was harassing women, and they first gave them a warning. Then they brought them all together and gave them like a lecture about how this isn't what the group wants, and eventually it became so habitual that they actually kicked that contestant out and kicked him out of the game entirely. So for about the catcalling, it could be something similar to that. The first one, make sure you give them the warning, don't do that the next time. Now we need to bring him in and give him a lecture about how this is not appropriate behavior and show him what the real appropriate behavior, and then if it continues to be habitual, now the catcaller, in this case Brett, there should be something more.
I feel like if the guy knows that it's been a complaint, it'll also be a thing. I feel like a lot of, in some situations, guys are like, well, they didn't seem like they were too worried about it, but it obviously bothered the veteran. But in his case, maybe he's thinking, I was just having a good time. He was under the influence. He probably didn't think it was that big of a deal. But I think if he found out that the girls were like, I don't want him around me, like it could turn into a situation where it won't happen.
And then like another thing, is he drunk every time, or is it like the ability to be sober? Because if he's drunk, but also like alcoholism.
How do you handle helicopter parent mom calls it because her daughter went to her room crying because somebody's been catcalling her? And she happens to be the wife of one of the college board members.
They want them to be
Yeah,
expelled.
they're gonna call for that. Young man's head. They're gonna call for his head.
The best thing with this equal entire situation is, from a housing perspective for NIPL's policy, is taking documentation of everything. Because say the girls weren't bothered by and moved off, but then if they come in and they're told their parents and then they want to file a police report for sexual harassment, it could get much bigger very quickly. So that's why you kind of have to document everything, take names. Sometimes a police report has to be done because they put hands on each other, because it could come back around if they were just like, guys, calm down, like, I'm going to walk away.
So what you're saying, in some situations, you need to take interim action
Yes,
while you're processing.
yes.
Not only that, it's bigger than us at this point. When you bring in a mother, family, a police report, I no longer, as the residence person, this is not my situation. Yes, it happened here. I've documented everything, but this is much bigger than me now.
We have parents calling instructors about their kids making a bad grade today, right now in college.
Oh yeah, we have parents calling coaches to find out why their daughter didn't play. So it's a process. It's like this is Division I volleyball.
Yeah, it called itself over my head.
It's over your head, yeah. But you do need to have everything, because if you slip up and you don't have everything documented, then it's gonna come back to me. So I need to make sure everything's done so that when it's over with me, it's over. And then they'll be like, the police will end up taking care of whoever this is. Because if they go to jail,
they'll be at school anyway. They have to leave campus.
And that's what we do written reports, so everything's documented, and then once it's set up, it's fine, and they can review your report, they can ask you questions, they have what they need, and you're done. Once it gets
Well, the main thing is that you have a process, and you don't in your process, your thought process, and determine what to happen can't be influenced by external pressures that have nothing to do with the facts of the situation. Or it's the fact that he told me later that he didn't like this to happen, it did happen, doesn't change any way what did or didn't happen. And there's going to be, in some cases, external or internal pressures that's happening.
And then all of this will happen, and the situation will come down to the guy was like, honestly, I was out of line, and it's okay, he punched me, and we're good friends. And you go through months and months of processes, because that it ends up not being anything at all. Like that's sometimes how it works.
I don't consider myself a gender biased person because I have 5 sisters that I grew up with. But for every one fight involving guys on this campus, there's been 19 involving women. Usually it was stuff for a freshman, or was stuff that happened in 7th, 8th grade.
We haven't liked each other ever since.
Yeah, that typically does.
And we've had situations where parents had come because this one cursed her daughter out, so she was going to come get her straight.
Oh yeah, parents.
We've had to ban parents from campus before.
Parents will come in and fight kids.
But parents will
Even
fight
that-
each other, so you have to stand in between them. It is the most awkward thing ever.
I substitute taught last semester, and I saw some crazy things. Like they'll come on campus.
Parents would come sit in the classroom and look around, want to fuss up kids.
And be like, say something today to my baby.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting right here.
So we're going to have to figure out a balance. But the main thing is that you have a process, a collection of information process, a determination of possible responses, and what's practical, what's the best short term, what's the best long term, and then you choose and implement. And then at some point you have a debriefing, so to speak, where you come back and you look at it, because if you don't look at the consequences of your decisions and you're making mistakes, you're going to keep making the same mistake. And it's okay to make mistakes, but you don't want the mistakes to be because you're using a flawed process to address situations. Okay. One of the things I just thought of, if you haven't had a chance to look at the CS standards, you either need to come check out a copy from me, or you need to go to that website that's on the course Moodle page, Gabby.
Okay.
Because the more and more I'm thinking about the final exam, it's going to probably have something to do with use of CAS standards. Now you don't have time to do a whole complete review, but an explanation of certain components or something like that. Because if there's anything you can take from this course, it's going to be the importance of knowing what you want to do before you do something, and then how do you determine whether you did it well, and how can you make it better. So, planning, implementation, assessment, use of the results. Okay. That's all the major points I have today. Look at your calendar and see when you want to do your presentations, because there's a presentation on the case studies. I have a date on. We're going to do those on the 18th. The other report's going to be any of those days. Your book review, your bibliography report, and your institution report.
So when we present, we have to call like a presentation.
Yeah, it's like you're doing a formal presentation.
Like a PowerPoint.
Most people use a PowerPoint, but it's not required. It's just that it tends to
So,
keep you
like,
focused.
For the bibliography, just kind of go through.
Right. And the reason why I'm having y'all do those is because at some point in your presentations, you're going to demonstrate the ability to explain what you thought you learned in a way that's done professionally and can be used by senior level staff. Because at some point in your career, you're going to be given a problem or a situation that they don't want to deal with, or don't have time to deal with, and they're going to tell you, write me a plan, or write me a response, or a letter. You have to be able to very methodologically present the information. This was what I found. these are the available options. This is what's best for the university why, this is what's best for the students why, this is what's best for the victim why. This is what we're going to do because this is what we have the resources to address. And the completeness of your presentation will determine your professional reputation in dealing with those higher ups or with community or with legislators or board members. It's sort of like generally where people come under attack in education is for not following their own rules for handling the situation. If you follow your processes and they have been vetted not just by you but by people you have to work with and your legal counsel and your board members, if you're telling people ahead of time, if these types of situations happen, this is our process for determining our response, you'll find that most people just want to know that they've been listened to, that they've had a chance to be heard. They may disagree with the outcome, but where they really get angry is when they disagree with the process, when it doesn't seem fair. Okay, well, thank y'all for coming today. Any questions? Gabby, any questions?
No, sir, I'm good.
We get back together on March 4th. That'll give everybody time enough to recover from Mardi Gras.
Is it?
Mardi Gras is February 25th,
Okay.
the day after my birthday.
Okay. What are you gonna do for your birthday?
Cut grass.
Seems like a plan.
Well, we're off from school that day, so
That's a tradition.
well, the Mardi Gras parade used to come two houses from my house, but now they don't parade on Mardi Gras Day in Thibodeau, so, which is okay with me.
They said home was pretty fun.
On Mardi Gras Day.
Almost times of fun.
I haven't done Mardi Gras. I'm from Texas, so
Gabby's
I'm
already-
excited.
Gabby's already laid some tracks in Thibodeau Homa.
Yeah, Homa parades are pretty good.
Cool.
Hercules on
Third
the,
night.
actually this Friday, Hercules is
Hercules
fun.
on Friday, then Aquarius,
So,
and
I
I
have
think
another
it's
question.
the
So like I've summarized like chapter 18. Like I just summarized the parts that I like not follow for, and then I have like
So state the key points, and then you're also judging whether it makes sense or it's good resource or it's not good or it's inconsistent with the
because
literature.
I put like 2 cents of light related to my topic, but
That's
also
okay.
put like if this was helpful or
Yes.
okay.
Or whether that author disagreed with another author that you found in a similar article, because that'll happen sometimes. All right, let me see. Gabby, I'm gonna log out and save it. So take care.
Okay, oh, I have one question real quick. Will this lecture be up on YouTube? My internet's been going in and out. We've
It'll
getting
be
ready for another,
if
we're
not-
under another flood warning,
if
so
not tonight, it'll be up on Friday.
that's perfect.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye bye.